I would like to welcome you to a video documentary that focuses on the effects of human-induced climate change on African savanna elephants by Michael Gordon. Today we'll be focusing on several key objectives to fully understand this concept. The first being introducing the general ecological background of African savanna elephants, the second being discussing the issue of human-induced climate change and the greenhouse effect, and the third being discussing the effect of human-induced climate change on the behavior and dispersal of African savanna elephants. As we take a dive into our first objective, I'd like to note that the ecological background for African savanna elephants has been presented by the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance Library in an article published in 2024. African savanna elephants are also known as bush elephants and are grazer-browser species. This means that these elephants will consume both lush herbaceous vegetation, such as grasses, and will also consume the soft shoots, fruits, and leaves of woody shrubs and trees. African savanna elephants are very social animals in which a matriarchal social structure is formed. The social groups of these species consist of females, which are otherwise called cows, and their offspring. The social hierarchy for these animals is typically determined by the seniority of female elephants within the group. Female elephants will often form social relationships that are complex with many other group members and hundreds of different acquaintances. The males, or bull elephants, will leave family groups during their teenage years and are often solitary and act independently for a majority of their life. African savanna elephants have interesting interspecific interactions in which these elephants coexist with three other large mammal species in the savanna ecosystem. These species consist of buffalo, the bush pig, and bush buck. African savanna elephants use their large size to chase away predators such as lions as a behavioral defense mechanism to avoid predation. African savanna elephants are also keystone species in the habitat they inhabit because of the fact that these animals impact the animals and plants that also inhabit the regions that these elephants live. Some examples include the fact that bush elephants maintain trails used by all species, and bush elephants will also keep vegetation maintained around watering holes, which creates a safe drinking space for other species to utilize. I would now like to briefly discuss the issue of human-induced climate change and the greenhouse gas effect. Anthropogenic activity, such as the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels and land use practices, has altered natural ecosystems worldwide. More specifically, the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels has released a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which are capable of trapping more heat energy from the sun and re-radiating this heat at an increased level towards the surface of the Earth. Therefore, through the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels, the natural greenhouse gas effect has been enhanced and a significant amount of warming of Earth's surface has occurred. This warming will continue to occur if humans do not avoid the burning of these fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. As a result, global warming will force species including African savanna elephants to adapt faster than their changing environment in order to survive and avoid extinction. Species including African savanna elephants will also demonstrate shifts in behavior and dispersal patterns as a result of the increase in surface temperatures of the Earth. I would now like to focus on our third and final objective of this video documentary by first addressing the effect of human-induced climate change on African savanna elephant behavior. In an article published by Curia et al. In 2024, 43 African savanna elephants were equipped with track collars over a 10-year period to assess the influence of seasonal changes on home range sizes in an ecosystem present in northern Kenya. Within hot and dry environments, elephant movement patterns are largely determined by the availability of water and suitable forage resources. This can drive a significant seasonal change in the movement patterns of these elephants. Females and male elephants were found to differ in their response to seasonal variation, in which females tended to occupy areas that were farther away from the river during the wet season, while males occupied areas further from the river of study during the dry season. This is because of the fact that during the dry seasons, the available food and water resources were less available, so the adult males had to travel independently and needed to move further away from the river to find adequate food, and then during the wet season, the male elephants had more access to high-quality food and water near the river. Overall, the wet season drives expansion of home ranges as water and food become more abundant throughout the landscape, which may affect the home range size of elephants in terms of increased global warming and human-induced climate change, because with increase in the number of droughts, these increased droughts may result in an ecological trade-off between foraging near water resources with lower quality forages and then having to travel farther distances to find food patches where a water source is not as present or prevalent. Following this, in an article by Mpakari et al. Published in 2020, stochastic gradient boosting was used to predict the changes in African savanna elephant distributions under varied climate conditions and land use practices in 2050. This study was conducted in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe. As global temperatures are expected to increase as much as 4 degrees Celsius due to human-induced climate change, the authors conducted representative concentration pathway scenarios in which temperature seasonality is expected to be related to extreme seasons, which might affect elephant geographic ranges and ecological niches. Elephants have trouble thermoregulating, especially when environmental temperatures exceed that of their body temperature, because heat will move from areas of high to low temperatures, which will be into the body of these animals. Behavioral responses such as mitigating the amount of surface exposed to heat or remaining at rest during the heat of day to avoid extreme heat stresses may be demonstrated by these elephants, but this heat stress may become too intense for the physiological adaptations of these elephants, so they may not be able to persist in habitats that they currently do, such as their suitable current geographic range, because of the increased global temperatures. This is because even though these animals have large ears to radiate heat, these homeotherms may not be able to tolerate increasing temperatures, especially if the ambient temperature is higher than that of their body temperature, because heat will be moving into their bodies from the ambient environment. In order to avoid hyperthermia, or the controlled increase in body tissue temperature, mechanisms will be used by these animals to cool down. But these mechanisms may require the use of water through evaporative cooling, which can pose a new challenge, such as because of the fact that water availability decreases with increased drought that is expected to result from human-induced climate change. Therefore, the geographic range of African savanna elephants could change drastically as temperatures increase, because these species are adapted to survive in a specific set of biotic and abiotic conditions. This is a perfect segue into the effects of human-induced climate change on African savanna elephant dispersal. Within the same article by Mpakari et al. Published in 2020, through the use of species distribution models, the results predicted that elephant habitat would shrink by 40% by 2050 from the current potential present range. Since extreme shrinkage in the suitable geographic range of African savanna elephants has been demonstrated on a more local level in Hwange National Park, the overall effects of varied climatic conditions on the geographic range and dispersal pattern shifts of African savanna elephants through the use of species distribution models should be used across the entire continent of Africa. Therefore, when analyzing an article by DeJean et al. Published in 2021, species distribution models were used to predict changes in the distribution of African savanna elephants in response to climate change and land cover change variables across Africa. Climate change is estimated to affect the distribution of wildlife, including elephants, due to the impact on the presence of quality forage, the degradation of the water cycle, and the competition for resources within and between species. Change in elephant distribution is driven by changes in temperature, followed by changes in precipitation, and then changes in land cover because of human use practices. This is because these species are adapted to thrive within a specific species range of ambient temperatures and require an adequate supply of water to survive in their environments. By 2050, the unsuitable areas for elephants under the models of representative concentration pathway scenarios predict to increase significantly, and the suitable habitat is predicted to decrease by over 50%. This has the potential to become worse because of African savanna elephants' dependence on quality forage and water supply to survive. Overall, on a large geographic scale across Africa and within a smaller scope in Honghe National Park, the geographic range and suitable habitat of African savanna elephants is expected to significantly increase in response to increasing global temperatures. It is extremely important to study the behavior and dispersal patterns of African savanna elephants in order to effectively implement conservation efforts tailored to these animals specifically. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the effects of human-induced climate change on the behavior and dispersal patterns of African savanna elephants.